All right, everybody. Hi, welcome. Yes, everyone, my name is Dr. Glenn DeGuzman. I'm the Associate Dean of Students and Director of Residential Life at the University of California, Berkeley. I'm also a podcast host for the Student Affairs Now podcast. So before we begin, just want to do some quick logistics. Restrooms outside just to the left. We also want to do a land acknowledgement, and obviously these presentations, all the presentations today, were taking place on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Kumeyaay people. We extend our respect to their elders, past and present, to all the indigenous people. So we want to make sure we send our respect out to that group. In addition, I want to acknowledge our key supporters. Obviously, the GeekEd Collective, please support them, continue to support the work that they do and their work on college campuses. Student Affairs Now, thank you for supporting this as well. And to Comic-Con for continuing to support and create a space for education professionals like all of us and many of us to share stories and innovative ways to engage and enhance our learning. So, with that, let me just kind of start with my boring monologue, just to kind of set the tone a little bit. I'm excited to be up here and moderating this phenomenal group of panelists who I think you're going to love enjoying hearing their stories. At the heart of all of what we do is always our students. And today, we're going to center our attention on this group, these unsung heroes, because they have stories as well. They are the Professor X's, the Oracles, and the Alfred Pennyworth of higher education. These folks go above and beyond, and their professional career have done so much to support college students. And they have dedicated their entire career to them. But we've also come to realize that just like the mightiest heroes, from Iron Man to Wonder Woman, sometimes they need a little leveling up. They need to recharge, and they've gone through some serious battles of their own. So like many Cape Crusaders, pop culture champions that we follow, these real-life superheroes have had to hang up their cape, respec their skill, and recalibrate their missions on campus or even beyond. And so today we're going to pull back the cowl a little bit and understand their origin stories, their why for reshaping their paths, how they continue to be heroes in new ways, and hearing their stories of self-discovery, that even the most dedicated mentors, they need their own bat signal of self-care. So let's hear from them and end my boring monologue, and let's get to know the panel.
What's that? That was not boring.
That's not boring? Were you getting teary-eyed a little bit? Yeah. So let's meet this group. So I'm gonna go ahead and we're just gonna go from this side to the far side. So Emily.
Thanks, Glenn. So my name is Dr. Emily Sandoval, she, her pronouns. I used to be an Associate Vice Provost for Student Development and Engagement at the University of Southern California. So I worked in student life, and my little boy is in the audience. I used to work in student life for over 20 years at 3 different campuses, and I just ended my 9th month as a compliance and policy program lead at the University of Southern California. So not student-facing, no supervision, and no crisis. And I think you also wanted us to mention a little bit about what we
Yes. So we're at Comic-Con, right? Yeah. Yes? Yes? So maybe for the panel, also maybe share a little bit about maybe your favorite fandom, or maybe a favorite cosplay you've been dressed up at, but something, just a little bit about yourself personally.
Oh my gosh, I have too many fandoms to list, but I'll go with Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, OG Nintendo, Super Mario Kart, Super Mario Brothers. Yeah, and I'm big into Broadway musicals. So, and I'm one of the founding members of the GeekEd Collective, so just want to echo that thank you for continuing to support us.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Martha Enciso. I use she, her, and ella pronouns, and I serve as an adjunct faculty member at the University of Redlands. Most recently, administratively, I served as an Associate Vice President for Student Affairs at Cal State Fullerton. So faculty-wise, I'm a little over a year in this particular role, so still student-facing, but just in a different capacity, and utilizing a lot of what I learned from a practitioner point of view now back in the classroom to utilize that as good examples. In regard to fandoms, I would say, echo with my colleague here, with Wonder Woman, Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'm wearing a Mafalda comic strip shirt. So that's one of my, from way back in the day, from my childhood. So rocking that, but happy to be here and be in community with y'all.
Hi, excited to be here. My first Comic-Con here. I'm Dr. Sofia B. Pertuz, and I am the founder of Mainstream Insight LLC. I do executive coaching, training, development, and team facilitation. So what brought me there was my role, 25 years in higher education. My last role was Associate Vice President and Dean of Students. I was at Hofstra University in New York, but I did work in several campuses. And then I took a bit of a detour and got recruited by the JED Foundation, which was still focused on higher education and education in general, but from a mental health, suicide prevention perspective. So it was still connected. And then I took another leap of faith 3 years later and took on a role working in the sports and corporate world with Billie Jean King Enterprises. Talk about working with a superhero. She truly is. So I would say my current role is I launched my own company and been doing that for a year. So it's been a really amazing superpower to have, to realize that all the skills I learned along the way I can use right now in so many different ways. And of course, I'm representing DC today for Wonder Woman, although that's my favorite character. Although I do love the Marvel Universe, so maybe there'll be a cross somewhere. Some of y'all are like, no, that's not happening. But I love Steven Universe was mentioned a lot today, so I appreciate a lot of the lessons there. So I will turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, Glenn and panel. I'm very humbled. I just want to get over here and listen to you all speak. But Brian MacDonald, I use he, him pronouns. I'm the executive director of communications for UCLA Student Affairs. And it's funny because this is first of all, just contextually, this is my, I think, 24th year in higher education. It's my 20th anniversary of coming to Comic-Con. And Emily and I have done these panels for quite some time together. I've been on Glenn's podcast before, and Emily and I joked, why are we still nervous about these? And it's because I think this topic is both very important. All these topics are very important, but it's very personal to me too. And it also forced me to go very, very deep into not only my fandoms, but also revisiting your why. So I just appreciate the opportunity. And so you'll hear more about my fandoms and my journey, but I will just say very quickly, about 4 years ago, another part of my story is that had a family a little bit late, right? So I didn't have my first kid till I was 40. That's late for by some standards, not everybody. But my daughter is 6. My son was just about to be born 4 years ago, and I had a job offer for a number 2 at a Cal State in student affairs, and just continuing on in that executive leadership. And I had to turn it down because my son was about to be born, and we didn't want to. We had a amazing situation at UCLA Health with their midwives, and just made a choice, and was fortunate to be able to pivot into a communications role. And the issues of student affairs have become the issues of higher education. So having that communications lens with the things that we're dealing with now was just an opportunity. And so you'll hear more about that as we go. I'll share my fandoms as we go on, but I will say I had a tough decision to make. I had my Crypt Keeper shirt and then this Hello Kitty Cafe shirt, and I was I need to show up for my kid. My son, he still shows up for the different trash cans in the convention center, but I think a part of some of our stories, at least for me with children, is it's not about me anymore. And for my daughter, her favorite shows right now, it's funny, it's Pee-wee's Playhouse and Punky Brewster.
Wow.
Those are the two shows that she's really into right now, in addition to Hello Kitty and Sanrio. But I think flipping, not making it about me is a big part of the different threads that, you'll see as we go through. So excited to chat with my colleagues here.
Well, let's get a chat then. So let's set the context. And Emily, I'm going to direct this question to you to kick us off. What is happening in education, right? Why are we even having this conversation on professionals, higher professionals? I would even say K through 12 professionals as well. Superheroes like yourselves, you're rethinking your mission, your career path, and some of you are even leaving, and many are leaving the field. What's going on?
Thanks, Em. This is a big question because I want to set the context that all of us have left roles, but it's not the issues at USC or Cal State Fullerton or Hofstra or UCLA. Well, you're still at UCLA and I'm still at USC, but So it's not an issue there. It's an issue nationwide with student affairs, student life professionals just being exhausted. And if you were here for the first GeekEd panel, we talked about our heroes and villains era and the work that student affairs professionals are doing to continue to support our students during external factors that are affecting all of our campuses. It's in the news. There's a lot of villains out there going after higher education and the work that we do with students and the community and the why, really, that a lot of us got into the field. So underneath that is the staff doing the work. And it's very normal and happening that a lot of us are burning out right now. For those of all of us who were in the field for well over 20 years, as we decided to pivot. And we're gonna talk more about that, but that takes courage. That takes self-reflection, because many of us, and I know I was told, oh, Emily, you're gonna be a vice president of student affairs someday. Like, you're gonna be this. I'm like, that's great, you're writing my story for me, but I'm my own author, and I'm telling you, no, I don't wanna be a vice president of student affairs. Thanks for thinking so highly of me. I was happy as a number 2. But then that became too much, and realizing that a lot of us are choosing to find new work-life rhythms. Thank you to my friend Grant who helped me coin that. So I don't think work-life balance exists, but there's a work-life rhythm. And you have to define what rhythm is right for you and make that decision to still hopefully do work that impacts students. And I'm still doing that at the compliance and policy level, but now it's with staff and faculty as well and university level. But they can still be my why, but I need to take care of me. So I think this is what's happening.
Wow. Are you noticing, for the other panelists, are you noticing any other shifts in rhythm at your respective campuses?
Something else that's popped up is either folks are hanging up the cape or the cape is being hung for them. So folks are having to have these pivots. There's unfortunately a lot of updates, at least on my LinkedIn feed, where I consistently see folks stating that they've either stepping away or haven't been told that they need to step away. So it's really figuring out what's the next step, really taking the time to evaluate life, personal choices and things. What do you really value and what do you really want out of this one life? Time is the greatest gift that we can give and that we have, and we only have so much of it, so how are we gonna use it to our advantage?
And I do want to add that Martha's the one who approached me about this panel. We bond over our love of Goofy, you know, and if everyone could live their life with that much joy as Goofy and a carefree life, I'm like, this is what I think both of us are striving for right now. So I wanted to give her a shout out for that.
Thanks. We're trying.
I would add, Glenn, too, I think that, there's 2 things I would add. One is, we're speaking from the perspective of folks with a good number of years in the field, but I think that this isn't particular to just senior level, executive level. I think that the pressures that folks feel across the entire organization in terms of entry level, mid-level, and executive level. And I think there's a couple reasons. One, I think that for a long time, we, as a field, and not just student affairs, not just higher education, but probably many helping professions, all were able to operate on, oh, you show up for the why, and it's the right thing to do, and I think that got a little bit exploited, and I think the labor movements of last summer showed that, of like, yes, I care about my job, but I need to pay the bills, and that's become not possible for a lot of people in helping professions, and so I think there's frustration. I see the frustration. Why doesn't Gen Z just show up and stay? And it's because they're trying to pay the bills. They're trying to make ends meet.
Right.
So I think that's an important aspect to this conversation. I also think, especially for universities that are in like big media areas, but probably everywhere, is that doing the job can sometimes come with, even in your best efforts, like being in the newspaper or having to contact your local legal counsel way more than you ever thought you would. And so there's an inherent risk that I think also is tied in that has become hard to bear for a number of folks in the profession.
It's a good point, Brian. You're right. It's all levels, right? And I think we're also seeing, for me, I think about where I work at UC Berkeley. I have seen, it was like, I think 7, 8, 9 years ago, I had the first person who needed to take a break, like literally took a leave of absence. But I've now seen 3 in the past year. So we're starting to see folks really kind of focusing in on their own wellness and self-care. And so this point, it's a good transition. Well, let's dig into your stories, because I think that's why we're here. We want to hear your journey. And I'm going to tie in a little Captain America here. So for those who saw the movie, right, we know that Steve Rogers had a moment. He walked away from the Avengers for very deeply personal and emotionally resonant reasons. He wanted a life with Peggy Carter. I hope everybody's seen the movie, right? No, I'm hoping there's no spoiler here. So my question for the panel, what were the internal factors and the backstory behind your change? Was it personal reasons, or, as mentioned earlier, is it the changing higher education profession? And Brian, I'd like for you to kick us off.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because when I think about Steve Rogers and the MCU, and I think about our current times, you know, part of, I think, the pressures on higher education is this demonization of what we dub as bureaucracy. And that actually it's like the staff and the people behind the scenes that actually keep these large organizations going. And when I think about the sacrifices that were made in the MCU, I think about like Phil Coulson. Like, if there's a bureaucracy in the MCU, it's SHIELD, and he paid the ultimate price early on and is an unsung hero, I think, in a lot of ways. But for me, I think Steve Rogers is a great example. It makes a lot of sense for me in terms of my pop culture upbringing. About 37 years ago, 9-year-old Brian convinced his mom to take him to the movie theater to see a movie called RoboCop. And like, if you've seen the meme, like, dude died, still had to go to work. I think it popped into my brain where like you had a officer who was so committed to his field that he left his wife and kid home alone and marched right into like the worst police precinct in the city of Detroit. And in this like dystopian future, and was in an organization that didn't have his best interest in mind, and walked into, you know, the headquarters of Red Foreman from That 70s Show and all the other, you know, bad guys from that film, and was killed, and then came back and became property of the organization of Omnicorps. And so he had to, you know, like that element of that particular story, as well as for me, Sarah Connor is another one that rings true, and I think this is a big part of my journey to get at your question, is many of us in Gen X are caring for multiple generations, and Sarah Connor was literally doing that for like the same person in multiple generations.
Right.
And so I managed my dad's care from 3,000 miles away for his transition onto public assistance and his disabilities and things like that. And so to have children and to have my father start to have those issues at the same time, and we as a family were coming out of COVID. We were the poster children for the triple pandemic, so kids going back to school, everybody getting sick. I think no blame on, you know, leadership and supervision, but like everyone was dealing with their own stuff. And so at that time, it was just, we were just on our own and sort of navigating. And for me, even though I had transitioned to this new position, I was failing at work for really the first time. And I just had to let balls drop and just deal with family issues. And I think that was a very difficult situation to go through. But having gone through it, I think it has created a level of empathy that I just didn't have before for folks who are doing caretaking. And the degree to which I think about how, for new professionals and emerging professionals, how to better prepare them from when those times come, because I do think those issues are going to get more substantial, especially caring for elders in our families. So those, I think, Sarah Connor, Alex Murphy, RoboCop, and then also I think like The Mandalorian, going from having the helmet on to opening up the heart for Grogu, I think is another one that rings true for me.
Well, I'll chime in and agree with Emily. When you have this path, when you enter student affairs, especially, you know, in higher education, there's almost a path they make for you. Oh, you're going to be vice president one day. I see it in you. I believe in you. You might even be president. At least that's what my mom thought. What are you not president yet? You've been there 20 years. It's like, that's not how it works. So I had to kind of reconcile that with myself first, leaving higher ed and going, okay, now what? How do I try this new thing and believe in myself and leave the safety of Themyscira, the island of Wonder Woman, in case you're wondering, and go into this world of corporate and nonprofit and things I hadn't really learned too much about before. But I really relied on the network that I was leaving behind. That was the saddest thing. I'm like, can I still go to NASPA? Can I still show up at the student affairs conferences? And they're like, heck yeah, you're here to help us. It's awesome because you have a new perspective and you realize that you didn't have to stay in that frenzy of the grind. And I remember my first year having left a dean of students position where you're on call 24/7, responding to stuff at all hours, and you are literally thinking, I need to run into every situation and go full speed ahead. When you have a network of people, and that's one thing I wish we could emphasize more, that we have a whole bunch of us out here that are heroes that can all help each other out. We don't have to be the only one. So when I first left and was in this position where it was truly a 9 to 5, I didn't know what to do with myself after 5. I was like, what fires can I put out? Meanwhile, I have 2 kids. I'm like, why don't we work on them and figure out what they need, right? They're about to go to high school and in grammar school and stuff. So I was like, wow, I can actually dedicate. I can relate to what you were saying, Brian. It's almost like a weird, no, but you need to dedicate yourself to this profession. And if you have kids, good for you, but figure that out. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, we should be able to nurture this with each other and not have people have to go on medical leave eventually when they completely burn out. So I don't want to add any more references to it except to say I was so grateful to stay connected, though, that higher ed is a really friendly environment that I never really left. I was still able to coach, consult, do training, and work really closely, and even teach. I never really left because I've been on dissertation committees where I've been helping people get their degrees, because now we know that that's a requirement as you do move up. It's like all these different things that get in the pipeline of requirements, and now more and more degrees is there. So no wonder we're burning out, because we're trying to do our full-time job, and it's like, oh, well, if you want that AVP position, if you want that VP, you also have to go and do this other degree in addition to your 2 or 3 masters that you already have. So I even started working on that, and that was an eye-opener for me, because when I went into corporate, not that they don't care about those degrees, they do, but they care more about the results you show and the outcomes you have. And I just feel like in higher ed, that was one thing that I remember going, yeah, we set a lot of goals. We set a lot of KPIs, all this stuff, but no one ever really tracked them well. We were just grinding, right? So when I think about the now and the way I connect the skills that you learned along the way and the people that you support, I can still do it from the outside without it being so frenzied and crazy. It's just like a different pace and a different way of looking at support in a much more healthy way than I've ever thought before. So I have no regrets. I'm sad because I did have that dream of the VP or president, and maybe it's not too late, but I also know if I want that, I have to contend with the other things that are all these villains coming at higher education. So I'm supporting from the outside, happy to do that, but also still like nostalgically looking at, well, maybe I want that still. So that's a bit of my backstory.
For myself, it's reevaluating the work and the time. I started to notice that it was affecting my health, was the other big key thing. So thinking about what's really important and what do I still want to do. I'm a big fan of kind of leaving it up to the universe, too, to see where I'm headed and what it has in store for me. So I'm really open, and I know that that's helped me so far. So I'm like, hey, we'll keep at it. I think back, too, to Star-Lord and Peter Quill, how he also thought about his time and spending more time with family. So that's been a big thing for me, spending more time with family. I use Disneyland as my gym, so I get my steps there, finding the joy, walking around the park, definitely because Goofy's there, right, Emily? Yeah. So going there. But yeah, really centering, like what brings me joy, what makes me happy, and how can I get more of that during this special time that I know is a privilege to have and to be able to do and live my life this way.
I'm actually very similar to Martha, what you were saying. Just, I think for some of us, we didn't realize that the stress we were carrying in these roles. Because some of us were dealing with life and death situations, with situations that were very traumatic for students. Students care very passionately. You cannot help them solve all of their problems. There's a lot there to work with. A lot of us here are first-gen students. Some of us are professionals of color, and there's just a lot of weight to carry. And I didn't realize that my work, although I care deeply about it, and I still do, was affecting my health and my well-being. So making that decision, I've joked with Martha, even when we were talking about this panel, even Giles stepped away from the Watchers Council, right? So I can still be there to support my friends and colleagues, the professionals that are doing the work from the outside. I still volunteer for the Western Association of College and University Housing Officers because I've been active in that Housing and Res Life Association for many years. So I can still do that work and still be present for other professionals who are doing excellent work for students, even though I'm not the one doing the work anymore.
Did any of you on the panel reflect on sort of like the shift or the changes that you've made? Sort of like a Neo and Morpheus-like conversation or a Yoda-Luke type experience, you know? Was there someone in your life, could be a friend, a partner, maybe like a Virginia Potts and Tony Stark type thing, right? Someone who just helped you rethink or reaffirm the choices you were making in your career?
I will say that at one point I had a therapist and a professional coach at the same time. And even with that, I needed and appreciated the validation from some of my outside circles.
Yeah.
So I had friends like my friend Alex and my friend Lisa Slavid from Semester at Sea, Annalyn, that we are both very close with, where I'd pick up the phone and call and they would just listen to me. And I almost needed them to say, it's okay to step away from the job because you are not the job. You are a person first. And similar to Brian, I was 40 when I had the little guy in the background that broke out into laughter a few minutes ago. So I know that he is my why, but in order to prioritize him, I needed to prioritize me. Because you have to, what's that metaphor? You have to put the oxygen mask on yourself before your kid. We all hear it every time we get on an airplane, but it's so, so accurate. I was not taking care of myself, so I was not the best mother or the best partner to my husband, and I needed to be better for myself. And those people helped me.
Yeah.
I would say I continue to have folks say, you look a lot happier. So that's a continual validation of, I did the right thing. So for myself, I think I did the right thing, but it's good to hear friends, colleagues, and then you mentioned we're still connected in higher ed, still highly involved in professional associations, still can do all the things, but it just looks a little bit differently. And I think that having other folks say that, yeah, they can see that change in you too. For myself, it reaffirms that it was a good decision.
You did the right thing.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean like what our title says that we can't go back to it if we want to. So similar to Sofia thinking back, like, do I really want to do this or that? The option's still there. Just at this time, I'm choosing to do this a little bit differently.
I think having stepped away, you can have a different perspective about setting boundaries in a very different way that I think you didn't know you could do. Like I had a coach who was like, but you can say no. No is a complete sentence, but you can set those boundaries. I'm like, but I can't because I was taught to just do what I have to do for my students. They're my babies, my kids. And it's like, no, they're not. They're going to leave in a couple of years and you're still there. So you need to take care of yourself. And I find myself on the other end of it where I'm coaching folks who are like, yeah, but I don't want to leave that because my children, they're not your babies. And when you keep thinking of it that way, one, it takes away their agency for what they need to learn, and that idea of challenge and support, bringing back some old school Schlossberg theory. But you got to challenge them, you got to support them, but not at the cost of your own well-being. So when they get that aha moment of like, you're not your job. And one exercise I help folks with is like, let's rewrite your bio without saying the first thing as your title.
That's right.
And once that they undo that, it's like, you are not your title, you're not your job. You can do many different things. And if you just name yourself by the skills you have instead, then you can see yourself go out of that. And until I learned that from some of my elders, people ahead of me in the field, some of them, I would watch them and they'd leave early. And I remember being so mad when I was an associate dean, my dean of students would just leave. I gotta go, I gotta get my kids. I'm like, so upset, like, oh, but we still have work to do. We have things, we have meetings. And she was like, no. And I remember being mad at the time, and it wasn't until later when I had distance to come back and think about it and go, well, she was teaching me boundaries. She was teaching me, but I didn't see it as the lesson. I was just mad because I was still stuck in my own way of working, because that's what I thought I was taught. So I think back now, and I'm so grateful when I think about her, because I think of the eyes of everyone who's still in it. And that distance now, I'm like, okay, now we can rethink this, and you can control and think about a way of working that will not put you in the hospital, that will not make you take a medical leave because of how hard you're working, and not because you are the one that, like, you can control that. You can, but I'll say this, we also have to let our senior leaders know that they need to be better at helping people set those boundaries too. So I'll leave it there.
Now I'm just thinking, I mean, that's spot on. Brilliant insights, and gets me thinking about just this idea, not just for higher ed and student affairs, but career as an identity is a relatively new thing for humanity. And I think we've been poking holes in that since COVID, and where you saw a lot of career executives and high performers just quit their jobs because they realized when they stopped doing it, they were happier. And we're trying to come back into balance now. As far as the question, Glenn, of the mentorship piece, honestly, the people who helped me the most through some of this was actually former students who I think considered me a mentor. And mentorship's interesting. Mentorship for me, going to college in the late 90s, was something that you referred to in the past tense. And it was a relatively new movement of, we realized having a mentor was a good thing. So then people were in the market for mentors and like a future thing. And that was kind of new. And now I see almost a commodification of mentorship, where if you're only approaching the students on the front line of the protests and trying to mentor them so they won't be as mad at you in the student newspaper, it's not mentorship. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the issues that I think we're starting to see too, is like this rapid movement of like, how do we manage these crises on our campus in as fast a way as possible? Well, how do we push all the resources into the students who are upset with us? So, don't push me out of my job and I'll give you a good reference. Like, there's some weird negotiations that are happening. And faculty saw this, a couple decades earlier with balancing, engagement and connection to academics on our campuses too. But to the question, I actually leaned on a lot of people who, 10, 20 years ago were my mentees and said, you can phone it in for a little while. You gave people plenty. So just take care of you. And that really also helped out, is like leaning on people who I thought I was there to support, and having them come back without any expectation actually really helped me get through some of those harder times.
It's fascinating that you mentioned that, because for me, and I'll just add to that, it was people who were not in higher education, who sort of kind of shared their stories of self-care and wellness, and I would share what I do, and then they're looking at me like, that's nonsense, that's crazy. Why are you doing all that? And so it had me rethinking a little bit about my values and the choices that I'm making, and hearing how they self-care allowed me to kind of say, can I do that too? And it took a while, but obviously finding happiness and finding wellness is critical. Emily, I want to, and Brian, I've known both of you for a very long time. We've kind of alluded to it so far, but we go back decades, and we knew each other when we were new professionals, and all three of us, so this is a residential life question for those who are in residential education or residential life, but at one time, we all held significant leadership positions in res life. I still do, and at our respective institutions, and it requires significant connection to many first-year students. We all know, and I know you both loved mentoring students and new professionals. But how do you stay focused on that as you took on these new roles? Like, because it is sort of like, it was our calling card, right? Like, that's what drew us into the field. Like, how do you stay connected to that, knowing the toll and the burden it can potentially have?
So I think it looks different now, clearly, but I still love the student experience. I was on campus a little over a week ago having coffee with a colleague, and it was the end of a first-year orientation session, and I got to hear the Spirit of Troy play for all the incoming students, and I ran over there to still take a picture and a little bit of a video clip and realize this still excites me. This still excites me. For the first time in 13 years at USC, I didn't know when move-in was. It's August 20th, it's the big date now. But that was weird for me. Like, my favorite day, I worked at 3 institutions, my favorite day of the year was always move-in. that energy, the unknown, just the excited families, friends, all just nervous to start their university experience. Like, I still love that. But where I'm not directly working with students, the work I do in compliance and policy does impact students. It impacts the entire university, but we're here for students. But what I really value is working as part of a healthy team. And I've been lucky that in every situation I've worked in, at every institution, even the team that I left in student life, we laughed together. We had fun together. And institutional compliance is part of our Office of Culture, Ethics, and Compliance, and I have found fellow geeks there. So I don't have an office anymore. All my pop figures are in boxes. I have a cubicle, a workstation, but I have all Star Wars and Disney art around my workstation. So that has become a new conversation point with my colleagues. So I'm still finding those connections, and even more important to me is I actually have the time to have valuable connections with former employees. So now I have the time to connect over conversation, and there's 2 staff members I'm thinking right now who are starting their Doctor of Education programs at USC next month. And shout out to Diana and Cynthia, because they're gonna be amazing doctoras someday. But getting to see their progress, support them as they start their journey, like, I actually have the time and the energy to be a good cheerleader for them, and that makes me happy.
I would say one of the fulfilling pieces of this journey now, a few years post my RoboCop moment, is I have amazing communications colleagues at UCLA, and they truly are, like, in a lot of ways, res life people without on-campus apartments, responding to, it really is like Professor X being connected to every thought across a giant spectrum when it comes to, caring about the university. And so I've discovered this whole second professional family, and being able to help fix a student affairs lens. I think student affairs is almost like how people say if you do stand-up comedy in the entertainment industry, you can do anything. And I feel like if you can do student affairs, like, the experiences I've had teaching in humanities departments and doing other things, like the ability to be in student affairs and just figure it out and do so many different, really, really different skill sets to just accomplish the mission has been really helpful. And then, so affixing a student development lens to a broader university communications perspective has been incredibly rewarding, because I think, and again, this is like really inside baseball, apologies if you're not like in higher ed in this room, but I think student affairs used to be an afterthought in broad-based communications in newsrooms, and then it was like 5 years ago, man, why are these people bringing so many crises to our door, to our story? And through working through that now, at least in my experience, is an understanding of the richness of what we do in student affairs that now is like front page news, not just the protests and the mental health crisis, but some of these other pieces. So that has helped in terms of being really rewarding. And then I have continued to find, every once in a while you find that like first year student who somehow was just born 20 years too late, and their favorite movies are like The Thing and Gremlins, and you're like, all right, you're my people. And we've actually had some of them on these panels before. Thinking of you, Jason, last year. But I think that you still find the ways to connect with those students. And what's funny is like every year, invariably, I will do these panels, and I will get a random email from a parent whose kid is considering UCLA. And whether they attend or not, you end up with those random, spontaneous, serendipitous relationships with people who just need to get from point A to point B. And if they come back in your life after, great. And if not, that's what we're here to do. So I think I just still try to embody that aspect of our work, is just like helping someone find where the restroom is, helping someone find just point A to point B is still really valuable to me.
We are starting to run out of time, and we have one question left. So if the panel could take about 2 minutes each to sort of answer this, it's sort of like a Jedi to Padawan time. So it's sort of like if you are giving advice to newer professionals in our field, many in our field obviously are going to resonate with your stories today. What advice do you have for others grappling with similar identity shifts or career shifts? Is there, and if you want to add a bonus, is there a character or storyline in your personal fandom that resonates to you in your own journey? And Martha, I'm going to kick it off to you. Have you start.
Sure. So I would encourage folks to go ahead and think about all the uneasiness and untangle the internal struggles that happen. So there's a lot of healing that's involved in making the switch. Like it's been mentioned before, just the goals that you originally had for yourself, that other people had for you. Also looking at identity. So a lot of, like it's been mentioned before, I encourage my students to think of themselves as people and not the career. So you serve as, so that means other people are going to come in after you. So that role can be there, or maybe not. But there's going to be people that come in. So it's a placeholder at the time. It's okay to say no to things and to use that time in a different way. So encouraging folks to, as Sofia mentioned, no is a complete sentence. Being able to spend that time for myself more with family, friends, and really cherishing that, because it helps a lot with the shift, but also that healing, and seeking out some support that way. So shout out to my sister Megan for being there through the whole thing.
I'm going to bring in Wizard of Oz
All right.
as we think about, you already have it in you. There's a lot of times when we don't feel courage, or we don't feel like we have the heart for empathy, or we don't feel like we can do the things and we don't have the tools. But I find that once you start asking really good open-ended questions, and that's one thing I will love and appreciate forever about student development theory, and some of what I learned early in my career being in residence life, literally living on campuses, working through really challenging situations with folks that they were just having existential crises or were trying to find themselves. I say you have it in you to figure it out. It's just really great when you can have people around you who can reinforce that for you, ask the good open-ended questions, and then once you figure out that path, say, okay, here's a few different ideas, and here's other people you can talk to about it. But back to what Martha said about, but those are not who you are. Those are just choices you can make along the way. And everything you learn along the way is valuable. It's nothing is wasted. When you say, oh, I took this position, I only spent a year in it, it was the worst place ever, but guess what? Some of the worst supervisors are the best teachers, because then you go, I will never be like that. I won't do this, or here's what I learned from that situation. So I don't regret any choice I made switching from one job or one institution to another. But one thing I do appreciate is that every single thing was a lesson. So that's what I would say. You have it in you when you get to the Wizard of Oz and he says, what are you here for? It's like, well, you already know what you want to do. I'm going to bring in Matrix too, right? You already know, you do, but you just need maybe some guidance or leaning on the people that support you and love you, and find those people and just ask. Always, always ask for help. You're never on your own.
I think previous Brian, Malcolm Reynolds made a lot of sense. Just aim to misbehave, be nomadic, have a bunch of troublemakers with you. But it's actually Nathan Fillion's more recent character, Officer Nolan from The Rookie, in terms of both jobs, like career change, but also family. His commanding officer pulls him aside in season 1 and doesn't tell him that he thinks he's going to be a bad police officer just because he's older. His younger officers are too dumb to be scared. And Nathan Fillion has too much experience. He knows what could go wrong in every single situation. That's actually a liability. And so that aspect of both parenting, but also looking at and giving advice to, I always try to remember not to burden, especially newer professionals, with all of my experience. But I think the one thing that I have kind of felt for a while, and it's very evident now, is I still believe that taking hundreds or thousands of whatever demographic goes to college and put them into this situation we call college is a really good thing. But if you look at the data of the benefit of having a college degree and not, in terms of the predictability of getting a job, is vanishing. Unemployment among recent college grads is lower relative to non-recent college grads than it's ever been. And so we do need to rethink what we do, because, just ask recent grads who are hoping to get a degree in coding or engineering. Like, those jobs are disappearing by the thousands every day. And so I think it's also a question of, like, my personal journey of having to switch and pivot and change and adapt, I think is something that I think about for our whole field as we think about what's next in the face of all the changes and questioning higher ed. So
I would add, there's a type of professional out there that as a student they were overachievers. That was me. As a professional, I was an overachiever. I said yes to challenges, yes to projects, yes to this project I wanted to do for the student experience, because I wanted to create the best experience ever for students. And I was enthusiastic about that too. So thinking back, I would have been like, you cannot do it all. People told me that, but it is really true. You cannot do it all. You have to learn to say no. No is a superpower. And my kid is running out of the room right now. But I would say, I think it's no secret that Buffy the Vampire Slayer is one of my favorites. And similar to the last panel, I had to grieve I don't talk about the creator anymore, and I'm so excited that Sarah Michelle Gellar is rebooting Buffy the Vampire Slayer with an all-in producer and creative team, so I can own that again. But the series ends with her sharing her power, right? And that's a reminder. You could look at it as student affairs professionals are expendable. I don't think we are, because each of us are unique and bring value and special talents to a team, but the work will continue even without us there. So that's what I would say. Don't overachievement. You cannot do it all. Save yourself, say no, and share the work.
And that's a great way to end the panel section. We're out of time, but really quickly, I do want to say a few things. One, just send shout outs to the GeekEd Collective, Emily, Brian, Alfred, Alex. I know that, and Alex is not here, but is with us, always with us. And all the Comic-Con educator planners and presenters today, the audiovisual staff, the staff at the Shipley Special Events Suite and the public library, the team at Student Service Now. Gretchen, where are you? Thank you for recording for me. I just want to close with, as educators, we live for the moments that challenge us, that transform us and push our narratives forward. Whether it be from the pages of a graphic novel that we just read, or on a college campus, transformation is the heartbeat of greatness. And, I grew up watching WWF, so as the late Hulk Hogan once said, quote, "Without change, there would be no growth." So I hope you all leave here not afraid to change, but be hungry for change. Use it as fuel to shape your stories, your art, your commitment to students and yourselves. So thank you, everybody.
That was so fun. Oh, yeah. We need a group photo.